All right, so we've given a general review and the score of 79 out of 100 to The Devil's Doorway. This is going to be a spoiler filled deep dive discussion. I would recommend that you only watch this if you have seen the movie uh, or you don't mind having it spoiled. But this is where we would go into the intricacies of the plot and the details of the ending and discuss them further. So I really, really did enjoy this movie. I thought it, like I said earlier, was very scary. It fell down in a few parts though, and I kind of want to dig into those. The parts that I felt like it really could have done a little bit better was primarily the setting. The Magdalene laundries I thought were fairly interesting, and I thought it was an interesting idea to have a found footage horror film shot in one of those as the setting, but it didn't really seem to dive too deep into the horrific nature of the Magdalene laundries. There were a few films that I can think of that I've seen that have done it better. The Magdalene Sisters, made in 2002. Philomena, made in 2013 with Judi Dench and Steve Coogan. Uh, it touched on certain aspects of them, but in my opinion, one of the best things that horror does is uses the supernatural to bring to light the horrible nature of humanity. And by having the setting in such a black eye and blight on the church, but failing to fully explore that, I thought was a very missed opportunity. So, they touched on some things about children getting separated from their mothers. They touched on some things about the working conditions and so forth. But the reality of the Magdalene Laundries and historical fact was much, much more abhorrent than was presented in The Devil's Doorway. I think the worst that it really got had to do with the possessed girl, and that is more explained by the nature of what the nuns turned out to be and what the nature of the girl was more than that it was the laundry itself. Um, and that was kind of the thing that I really thought the movie could have done better was, I mean, not just the setting, not just the Magdalene laundries, but it just seemed to touch on things, but never fully flesh them out. The notion that the elder priest was possibly born in this laundry when he was an orphan, sent to orphanages. It touched on that, and it had the big welcome home ending, but it never really explored what that meant. Did he complete some sort of spiritual circle for them, some circuit that allowed the pregnancy and the birth to happen? What was the birth? What was the child? A lot of unanswered questions. What was the nature of the nuns? They were doing devil worship, but to what end? How did they get there? How did they go about it? The fairly personable nature of the room that the priest came across with the possessed markings on it, or the satanic worship and the altar and the markings on the walls. Specifically, the elder priest said that he saw something like that in Greece. And does that mean that that room was, and considering that it just flashed away as soon as the camera left and came back, which is a really good creepy moment, but the fact that it was personable to him, was that intentional? Was and again, to what end? Uh, just a lot of questions that it touched on enough to make me ask, but not give enough information to really answer. But the nature of horror can be mystery, and it doesn't necessarily have to have every loose end tied. Overall, I thought it was a fairly consistent movie that brought the scares, and again, the timing of the jump scares I thought were just superb when the curtains were being focused on and the handprints were there, and then the girl popping out and then running away. That one really got me, and major kudos to them for how they set that up. Everything about that, with the timing, the camera angles, the lighting, the curtain flow, the handprints. it took me totally by surprise, and yeah, I love that part. The story of the possession with the girl I thought was good, but it has been done a million times, and I didn't really see that portion of the Devil's Doorway really step up to the plate and do anything special or unique with that. It was kind of a little bit done to death, possessed girl, pregnant, floating, gives birth. But I will say that the giving birth portion I thought was very, very excellent. Not in any scary fashion or even disturbing fashion. Maybe it was trying for a little bit disturbing there, but I thought that just on an acting level, it was amazing and it was written very well. There's a million ways to approach a particular shot, and when you have a nun giving birth to a nun helping with the birth of a child, as a woman is being pretty much torn apart by it. There's a million different camera angles you can use. There's a million different ways to write it and approach it, but the idea of staying close focused on the girl's face, not seeing anything, hearing things, having the nun that's helping be singing, it was very, I thought, powerful. And so yeah, I high marks on that scene too. Really have to give it to that. Overall, I thought one of the best features of this was Layla Roddy, and I think that watching him go through the movie with starting out with broken faith and then being presented with evidence of not necessarily miracles but extraordinary supernatural events. And the thing I like is that he didn't dismiss any of them out of hand, even though his faith was shaken, even though he didn't at that time believe in miracles. He didn't dismiss them out of hand as rubbish. He always tried to find a logical scientific explanation for them, but he didn't dismiss the idea of miracles, even though he didn't believe in them. I thought that was actually a very multi-layered, balanced, and nuanced way of handling the character and what he was being presented with during the course of the movie. So, if you want to leave comments on here talking about maybe some of the questions that I had regarding the ending, regarding the nuns, regarding deep diving further into plots that I thought that the makers of the film touched on but didn't really answer. Maybe you caught them and I didn't. So feel free to engage in discussion. I will be reading the comments, and thank you for joining us at Rotted.